Hi, everybody. This is our August EMG webinar. Today, we're going to be learning about landscape design from Janet Rash and Newport News Extension Master Gardener. Our meeting is recorded, and Janet has some participatory questions for you. So when she asks, please put your answers in the chat. And at the end, we'll have some time for some more questions. All right, Janet, go ahead.
Thanks, Grace. Grace asked me to introduce myself, but she's just told you everything you need to know. I'm a Newport News Master Gardener, and we're going to start. There you go. Thank you for attending today's webinar on landscape design, and thank you to Grace for giving me this opportunity to share some information with you. I'll be asking for your input during the presentation, so for the sake of time, please keep your chat responses very short so that I can read out as many as possible. And there will be time, I hope, at the end for questions. So here we go. Being a master gardener for 19 years, I've heard a lot of questions about home landscaping from both fellow master gardeners and our local residents. The emphasis of this presentation is on how best to solve problems and meet the needs and desires of the client, whoever it is, without doing what you see here. I'm not going to try to teach you to be a landscape designer. That's not the intention, and that's not the intention of covering landscape design in our Master Gardener training. My intention is to give you realistic suggestions that result in successes for you. So let's think about a couple of very big picture concepts which have been added to the newest version of our Gardener's Handbook. Planning, if not the most fun part of landscaping, it really has to be done, and it's the most important part. And if done, this planning, as you'll see, it makes the designing part, the art part, so much easier and more successful. And if not done, which is how most of us work, well, how I work, I go to a nursery, I see something I like, I buy it, and then I come home and figure out where to put it. But so if you're not working with a plan, landscaping becomes one failure after another. So let's find a way to keep that from happening in our own yards and in the yards of our client. It takes time and thoughtfulness and effort, and the steps in creating a landscape design are very complex. However, if you take them one at a time and simplify them, you can accomplish this, and your landscape will benefit greatly from the effort. Tackle landscape design one step at a time. The second statement in our handbook about our wants and needs is very important considering the state of our ecosystems. Our wants and needs should be balanced with what's good for the environment, meaning the protection and the preservation and the restoration of our natural resources. These should be a priority and reflected in all we do in our yards, and indeed all we teach our clients and our new master gardeners. I hope all our units share these priorities. Well, what's an example of making the environment a priority? Well, a simple example is to always choose native trees for a property when you're going to put in a tree, if at all possible, and never put in anything invasive. Never. There's just no reason not to pick a native tree, and there are millions of reasons to do so. The support of the insects that are vital to our survival. So part of taking into consideration the environment and natural resource protection is incorporating these 5 sustainable concepts. Biological diversity. Using a ton of different plant species promotes a variety of beneficial insects and food and habitat for animals, including pollinators, and reduces pest and weather impacts. Think English boxwood, right? And the boxwood blight, a fungal disease that wiped out whole traditional landscapes because they were primarily made up of this one shrub. No longer good horticulture practice. Resource conservation, working with the existing topography, using local plants and materials. Know what you have and protect and use the natural resources on your property. And buying local saves transportation costs and supports local businesses. Long-term planning, planning for mature sizes of trees and other plants and for the future needs of the family living there. This is going to reduce costs and maintenance and give you healthier plants. Low impact or input. Disturb the site as little as possible and select site appropriate plants to reduce maintenance and chemical use. The right plants usually don't need fertilizer and frequent watering, as you know, once they get established. And finally, water conservation. Grouping plants with similar water needs, using rain wisely on the site, and managing runoff to nurture your plants on the property while helping protect waterways. To do a complete landscape design or just a part? Well, how do we begin? Well, first of all, remember that unless you're French nobility, it's probably going to take years to implement a whole landscape design. So, be patient, work smart, understand the area with which you're working and analyze the use of that area. Select the part of that landscape that needs attention the most. The area that, when done, will make the biggest difference. So get to know the area you're working with, and we're going to do that by making a base map, a scale drawing of your property. If you do this step, you're going to find landscape design for your own property to come so easily. And if you have a survey, which is what I've got over here on the left of on the screen, I just taped it up to a window with some painter's tape. I taped a piece of graph paper over it, as you can see on the right, and I just traced it. Got a pencil, got a ruler, and traced it. And once I got this scale drawing done, you never draw on it, on your base map. Tape your copy up on the window and make multiple tracings of it on other graph paper sheets, which is then going to make future work so much easier. Those copies of the original copy are going to be what you work with. If you need to start from scratch, it isn't that difficult. You don't have to have a plat, just get a tablet of graph paper and get your kids or grandkids to help you. And find the person who loves art or math and put them on the graph paper with the pencil and the ruler, and put the two people who can just read a tape measure at each end of the tape measure and get going with it. It's going to be fun. You're going to call out measurements, and your artist, your mathematician, is going to have a great time doing that drawing. Make it a group effort. So here's step one. Before drawing, determine the scale you're going to use. 1 square equals 5 feet. That way I could get everything on one sheet of graph paper. You can work on a larger sheet of graph paper if you want and adjust your scale accordingly. Measure and draw the perimeter of your property on the graph paper and note the measurements on your graph paper. All right. Then step 2, locate one corner of your house and draw it on the proper place inside the perimeter. whenever you're locating something, you have to take 2 measurements to actually locate it correctly on your graph sheet, on your original scale drawing. Step 3, measure and draw your house. Add all parts of your home. Add the patios, the decks, the porches, the steps, the first floor windows and doors. You can see that some measurements have been added from the house to the property line. That's going to help you when you're figuring out how large you can make a bed. Do this while measuring your house at the same time. Okay. Label all the rooms and the exterior doors. This is going to help you think about where you need views out of windows. If you want a view, you won't want to put a tall plant there. No covering up of sight lines. Locate all major elements on this base drawing. Put in walkways, put in outbuildings, put in the driveway, the utility systems, walls, fences, a well, the water spigot, existing beds and gardens. Finally, locate and draw your large trees. So you're going to use triangulation to locate your trees. What that means is you're going to take 2 measurements from the tree's trunk. The person with the tape measure stands at the tree trunk. The other person takes the tape measure out to a corner of the house and calls out that measurement. On this drawing, it's 20 feet. Then starting again from the tree trunk, go to another corner of the house. On this one, it's 22 feet. And then your person working on the graph paper can place the location of the trunk of that tree in the proper spot on the graph paper. And you can also notice the edge of the canopy, the drip line. If you're working in summer, that'll be helpful too. This is your base map. You're not doing anything else to this map as you see it here. Everything else is going to work from tracings that you make from it. Now it's time to pay more attention to the details of the property. This is going to become your site analysis. This is when you really start thinking about what's going on and happening in the yard. Where are the utility boxes? Where are the sunny and shady places? Where's the septic tank? Where's grassy areas? Where are there any areas where there's an erosion problem? Maybe from a downspout. You're going to give a lot of thought to this site analysis, noticing areas with lots of sun or shade. Watching what happens, I went out with an umbrella and literally followed rainwater because I'm on a hill, a slope, and where it went and where it gathered on my property. Notice things like lights that are invading your yard when you don't want them to, or sight lines from your neighbor's house, from their windows, and make a little note here that you might want to block that view with some plantings. And then look at the soil, the content, is it dry, is it average, is it moist? How long does it stay like that? A day later, a week later. Note access to all parts of your yard. Knowing all these different parts of your landscape will greatly direct your landscape design, and not knowing these things, as you can imagine, are going to result in a very poorly designed landscape that's eventually going to have to be changed. I mean, they have to be changed anyway because things move and change and grow, but you don't want to start out by making mistakes. Let me add a note here, and this is a really important note, and you've already thought of it, I'm sure. If this is for you, you're going to do all this work. But for someone who calls your help desk and wants help landscaping their yard, you're not doing this. They need to hire a landscape designer, right? I can't imagine that you could do this kind of work. We do home visits in Newport News, And if someone wants some help with landscaping in a part of their yard, we might go and look and make some suggestions, but we're not doing this work for our clients. So I just thought I'd mention that so that you don't think I'm completely crazy. In Newport News, we can go to the Newport News website and find an easement, find a map that shows easements on our properties all over the city. And so I thought I would let you know that, because it's probably true in your local town as well. And it helps a lot when you're planting. I put some beautiful trees on the edge of my property near the curb and didn't think about easements. And so don't make that mistake. Make sure you know where your easements are. On a new tracing, do a user analysis. We used to call this a bubble diagram, but user analysis is the proper name. And you're going to use arrows and bubbles. The arrows are going to indicate where people walk to get from one place to another all over your property. Where are you walking to get to the trash? From where are you coming? How are you getting into your house? How does the public get from the street to your house? How do you move from your patio or your back door? How do the kids move around your property? All these arrows are really important because you're going to not want to put plants in the way of those pathways. And then you're going to draw bubbles or outline the areas to indicate how you use the yard. If you don't have a vegetable garden, but you hope to in the future, then draw a bubble around that sunny space on your property. Save it for that. If you've got a children's play area, you don't even have kids yet, save it for that. It could be the area where you're partying now and it becomes your kids' playground in the future. So put a bubble around that to save it. And let me suggest this, as gardeners, take a back corner of your property and save it for your garden work area. You're going to need workbench or two and a place to put potted plants for the plant sale when you do propagation, and a pile of sticks and a pile of soil and a pile of compost and all kinds of other things. To have your own space designated in your yard, that's a very important thing. Save it, mark it out, and landscape around it. I have a back corner of my property that is designed just for that. There's filtered light back there. And right now there's about 50 or so potted plants that I've propagated for our upcoming plant sale. And they love the filtered light back there. And so they just stay there in their pots. And when I'm watering other plants that are in pots and changing the water in my bird bath, I go back there and I give them a drink too. So give yourself a work area. You deserve that, don't you? Heck yeah. So then draw around those areas where you've used it, connect those bubbles, and look for unused space. Look for unused space. What's the best thing to do with this unused space? I bet you anything you're going to find unused space. Usually, from what I've seen in our city, it's a huge old backyard that is never used except when the lawnmower is run across the grass back there. No one ever uses it. It's really unused space. So if you've got areas of unused space, as you see here, the arrows pointing to them, try to select some large native trees to plant in those areas and go ahead and get that done. Start on that this fall. Fill those areas up with native trees. Be careful that you're not spending a fortune buying very expensive 4-inch trees from the professional nursery. Go to your local plant sale, master gardener, master naturalist, and buy their smaller native trees. You know how the roots are going to be healthier in the pots than in those giant trees. that have been stuck in those pots for year after year after year. If you've decided to plant evergreens for a wind block to break the wind up from the north in the winter, or evergreen plants to grow tall to block a sight line from your neighbor's house, or to block the light from a city light, and you want night flying insects and you don't like that light coming in, get those in the ground now. Don't wait. You might as well get them in and get them going. And I'll just tell you from experience, if you've got a sweet gum tree right out your back door and you think you're going to love cleaning up those gumballs every day, I just suggest to you that you're going to get tired of it real soon. Go ahead and take that tree out. The sooner you take it out, the more bang for your buck you're going to get it over with. Plant wonderful trees in the back. Little trees don't replace the environmental services, the ecological services that big trees give. I know that, but you also need to live comfortably and happily on your property. So get it over with and take care of that. So many of us want to just jump to the decorating part of landscaping, adding color, adding annuals, and forget the planting of plants that are the bones of your landscape. If you have some large empty areas, add some big native trees, hopefully keystone plants, the oaks here, those that supply the best support for the greatest number of insects. Okay, here's another site analysis, and these homeowners have found unused areas, and they've begun to note, look at there in the top right-hand side, shrubs for screen to hide utilities. Really cool. Add trees for shade down there in the lower right. More plants and trees over there in the lower left. This is a great site analysis because these folks are really analyzing and beginning to note some general changes that they're going to want to make for their property. And let me point out that if you have natural areas in your yard, those are great play and discovery areas for children. Remember those sustaining concepts? Work with the existing conditions and disturb the site as little as possible. You don't have to take out trees to put in grass for play to happen. Kids love to explore. And kids are creative, and they can go play soccer in someone else's yard, right? There you go. So all this time that I've been doing tracings of my plat or drawing a scale drawing of my property and doing a site analysis and looking at my property, you may want to do this for multiple months or a year, making notes. You're going to be making a plant list while you're doing this. Once you've discovered the conditions, the light, the wind, the soil, the moisture, start making plant lists as soon as you can. And whenever you find a new plant that you think or you've seen in similar environments in someone else's space, add it to your plant list. I have basically 3 different climates in my yard. Now, I have a ravine that's its own climate, a little mini climate, and I don't touch that. It's filled with its own native plants. But I have dry shade, and these plants from dwarf iris all the way up to red buds and cedars and oak leaf hydrangeas, they're growing and thriving well in my dry shade. I have very small amount of average to moist shade, and there's different plants, and you can see those herbaceous plants here that I have in those areas. That's where I cram in all those blooming native plants that like average soil. And then I have dry part sun, and that's where you see that I've added cedar will grow anywhere in my property. Red bud is a little bit forgiving. And so I'm noting all these plants and I'm creating a plant list before I've even done any landscaping. This is really important. You're going to want these lists because you've given thought to these lists. You've analyzed, you've considered, and you've made what I like to call a curated list of plants to work from. A rain gauge is a great thing for you to use to determine how much moisture is there. If you want to put in a vegetable garden, you're going to need more than, or a flower garden, more than an inch of water of rain. If you're going to irrigate, that's fine. But if you're not, look for those areas in your yard. Make lists that contain plants that thrive in your area, in your conditions. These lists are going to give you direction when you go shopping. Generally, most of us don't work this way. Generally, we go, we see, we buy, we smush it in, right? But please work smarter than I did in the past and make your curated list of plants. I want to give you some resources, and these resources are on the handout that Grace sent you. These are some of the resources that I used. I guess it's been about 7 years now, no more, when I started really making an effort, ripping out a lot of the non-native plants in my property and putting in natives. And so I wanted to just share with you the ones that I have used. The Green Book, which is in regional availability, you know, there's a different book for each region. And so you can find this for free download from the website there that I've shown on the left. So it's a wonderful beginning resource. Doesn't have a lot of plants in it, but it's a great starting resource. The Native Plant Finder is also a good resource. It'll let you know how many species of Lepidoptera are going to use your plants, which is really a nice thing. If you're making a selection and you're choosing one plant over another, you're going to want to choose the plant that's going to support the greatest number. So that's a great resource as well. I really love this brochure from the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation. It includes light and soil requirements. It's a wonderful, wonderful resource again, and it's downloadable for free. We use these Howard County garden design templates at our help desks when we're out in the public. We printed them out, we laminated them, because as you can see, they have already designed gardens for every single type of condition, for all the different conditions, sunny and dry and sunny and moist and part sun and dry and part sun and moist. It goes on and on and on. And so we printed them out and laminated them. And what I love about these already designed garden designs is you don't have to invent from scratch. You can use this. And on the back of it, here you see the garden design on one side, and they're describing the plants that they've selected. You can change the shape of this garden if you want to. It doesn't have to be the shape as shown. Just try not to do away with the plant selections, because they're choosing for multiple seasons and multiple kinds of support for pollinators. And so you want to keep the selections of the different species. But what's very cool about this, on the back of each of these garden designs, look at this. If this plant that they've chosen isn't indigenous to your region, they give you some options, and we seem to always find, because we're not up at Howard County, so we can find the options to choose plants that'll work from our area. It's a beautiful resource, and people just love it. Izel, now I am not supporting this company, I'm not endorsing this company, but I am telling you that their website is chock full of information. It's wonderful for plant information, and so why not use it? It's a great resource. And NC State, this is just so nice to use this plant toolbox, because you can filter for all different kinds of criteria that you're looking for. Just be careful, because what I've noticed at the NC State plant toolbox is that they have some invasive plants there and they're not always marked. So be careful, do your research, but boy, the search criteria is so wonderful, and you can search your regional area, and so it's a great resource for you to use. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Let me see if I can go back. All right. Okay. If you haven't found it already, let me give a shout out to the Master Gardeners of Northern Virginia. When I first began to use native plants, I used the heck out of this site. I mean, it was my Bible. It was my go-to source because they had these wonderful plant this, not that. And I was trying to figure out what to use instead of Nandina. And so they gave me options. I absolutely want to say bravo to these master gardeners for such a wonderful resource that you've shared with all of us. It's absolutely wonderful. And finally, let me suggest to you that you visit local demonstration gardens. I mean, why not? This is our demonstration garden in Newport News in Riverview Farm Park, and we have 7 beds in this garden. We have an evergreen garden and a pollinator and a touch and smell and a rock garden and a shade garden and a native grass garden, and people can come and see plants that are growing in our climate in Tidewater, Virginia and Newport News, and you don't have to buy the plants and see if they're going to work. It's a great way to learn and see what's going to go on and what's going to work in your property, and so take advantage of this. This is a wonderful thing. Okay. I also want to note that when you look at my plant list, I want you to pay attention to the fact that I've got some non-native plants on here. I've got some camellia and I've got pieris and I've got a sky pencil holly, because I've learned that when I'm doing landscape design, I need, especially in the world of evergreens, I need more options than what's available in the native plant palette. And so as long as it's not invasive and not going to be harmful, I'm going to use not a lot of these plants, but I want to have them as options because I want to have as many choices as possible. All right. So perhaps you're starting because so many landscapes look like this. Perhaps you're starting with this typical landscape and you've gone through the mapping steps and you've decided where to plant trees in the unused areas. What's next? What area can you work on and design for that's going to give your property the biggest bang for your work and your money? What's going to improve the look of this property, improve the curb appeal, increase the value of the property, and maybe along the way reduce excessive grass and watering needs and chemicals? It's the foundation plantings, the beds up against the house that act as a transition between the horizontality of the lawn and the verticality of the house. Plants that visually soften the hard edges of the structure and visually connect the house to the ground. These are the plantings that look good in every season. Generally, foundation plantings we think of as evergreens if you want year-round beauty. All right. So most often when a client comes to us, it's with this type of typical landscape. This is down the street from where I live. And as you can see, they want to know, they come to us and they say, What can make this better? Translate that into prettier, right? What can I do to make this prettier? And that's where we're going to focus our attention on these foundation, overgrown foundation plantings. At this point, folks, honestly, rethink the idea of designing the whole landscape and focus on the foundation plantings. Then you can move on to other parts of the yard. For most of our clients, they're going to want the traditional style of landscaping. And I don't know how to emphasize this point more. I don't think we're going to make headway if we discount traditional landscape foundation plantings and just promote the use of natives only. We have to bring more people into the world of natives, and I think we're going to do it by working with them and giving them the look of a landscape that they want and working natives into that aesthetic. Once they see the butterflies and the hummingbirds and the birds and the pollinators, then they'll want more. We must reach out to this huge majority of homeowners and meet them where they are, right? You're going to see in this presentation bringing both worlds together for the benefit of ecosystem restoration. Our handbook, like many landscaping resources, focuses on these design principles. I know you've read about them in the handbook, and I know you've probably studied them and given a lot of thought to them. And I'd like for you to keep these in mind, and they're on that handout that we sent you. But I don't think they're enough to get you started. I just don't find them useful in actually creating a landscape design. So I'm going to give you something more specific to guide your beginning design steps. I did not invent these, but I use them all the time. And here they are. Before we're going to start looking at some landscape plantings, and I'm going to ask for your input, but I want to go over these foundation planting guidelines because these are the basic ideas to help guide you when you start to design beds, the foundation beds around your home. They aren't rules, because any rules in anything artistic can be broken successfully. So I'm not saying they're rules, but I am saying that a lot of time is spent by folks like me teaching the elements and the principles of design. But if you start with these guidelines, most of that's going to take care of itself. Not all, but most. Here they are. Have the height of the plants in the foundation bed no more than 3/5 of the depth. A little more than half the depth. So if you plan to put a 6-foot tall plant at maturity in a bed, you're going to need a 10-foot deep bed at least. Now, I know your microphones are turned off, but I'm imagining that there was a little bit of rumbling out there because most of us don't have beds that are at least 10 feet deep, but you need them. Here's the next one. Plant 50% evergreens in your foundation beds. 50%. Because after all, you want something to work visually in winter months. 25% flowering or deciduous shrubs, and only 25% perennials or annuals. Move your shrubs away from the wall at least 1.5 or 2 feet. You know that at mature size, which means you should plant a lot of your plants like 4 feet, 5 feet away at first, depending on. I start small. I don't have a lot of money. Think about service to around your house or the maintenance, mildew caused by plants up against the house. Plan beds that are at least 6 to 8 feet deep. Design beds, this is important, design beds that curve rather than have straight lines. Your house has enough straight lines. Your beds should complement that and soften the lines in your house. So use curving lines, gentle curves, because you don't want to take a lawnmower and have to make a 90-degree angle, but gentle curves. Put the tallest plants in the back and the lowest in the front. And don't cover your windows. Keep the view from inside the house in mind. Select plants that won't cover the windows without too much pruning. If you got to constantly prune a shrub to keep it smaller, you've probably chosen the wrong shrub. Right plant, right place, right? You're going to need to add to your list of plants evergreens if at least half of them have to be evergreens in your foundation beds or your clients' foundation beds. I have a few native choices over here on the left. Some of these will work, but some beautiful native plants that are evergreens, I mean, wax myrtles, they're too big. I mean, they get huge, right? And bay and yaupon, there are cultivars of yaupons which will work to replace boxwoods or Hellerii hollies. Those are great. There are cultivars of inkberry that will replace those Hellerii hollies and those little boxwoods, so that's nice. But again, over here on the right, I've got some non-native choices for you. And in our area, in Newport News, Salvia gregii is evergreen. Aren't we lucky? Rosemary is evergreen in our area. And so, and the lovely thing about that is deer don't eat those plants. And so, yay. I use those like shrubs because they get so big in a lot of landscape design. A lot of landscape design. Okay, your turn. And I'm going to pay attention to the chat. I have not been looking at the chat until now. What I would like you to do is take a look at the foundation planting guidelines in the handout, and in the chat, look at this photo of this foundation planting and tell me which guidelines were followed in this bed. %50 evergreen. I agree with you. Thank you, Sarah. Great job. Someone else, Lisa pointed that out. The tallest are in the back. That's exactly right. Elaine, thank you. 5 to 8 feet deep, short in front. Good job. Everybody's pointing out the tall in the back. Beautiful ratio of depth. I love that. The windows aren't blocked. Very nice. Mix of heights. Good. Depth of bed. Low in front. Curved lines. There you go, Nicole. Thank you. I was wondering if anybody was going to notice that. So fabulous. Great job looking at this. You've named every single one. Also, I want to point out, just in case you didn't notice, notice how, and this is where the elements and principles of design come in, notice the unity that this homeowner or landscape designer or fabulous master gardener used when they chose white flowering herbaceous plants at the front of this bed to relate to the white of the trim of the house. It's just a beautiful way to tie the landscaping into the home. Okay, how about we move to another one? Are you ready? Here's another one. I'm going to give you some time. Totally different, right? What's working here? This is so formal. I'm going to give you a few more seconds. Okay. Yes. Beautiful curved lines. Thank you, Anne. And matches the formality of the house. Thank you, Chris. I couldn't agree more. The colors are minimal. I agree. This house is so gorgeous. It doesn't need a lot of ornamentation, right? I mean, who would want to draw attention away from the beauty of the home. The windows aren't blocked. I agree with you. That's so nice. And it's compact to highlight the architecture. Excellent, excellent. And the tree has been moved away from the house. And if you're looking at the house from the front, we're looking at it kind of cattywampus from the side. But if you're looking at it from the front, that tall but small tree is going to soften the edge of the facade of that home. Very, very nice. Let's do another one. Ah, totally different. This little Cape Cod. Let's see what you think about this. Is it successful? Did it work? Could something be done differently? Cute color. Oh, I lost it. Somebody match the hydrangeas. Yeah, I agree. The hydrangeas. And notice with the repetition of the hydrangeas, there's not too much variety. They've added unity by repeating. Matches the size of the house. Yep, the scale is a beautiful repetition. It's very balanced. Very nice. Very nice. I agree. Thank you, Virginia. This could use a curved bed, and it could use a deeper bed, don't you think? It feels a little smushed. So why not get rid of some of that grass, pull the bed out, and then curve it as it gently reaches towards the beautiful brick walkway, and then bring it in slightly, and then maybe curve it as it goes around those conical shaped evergreens. Did you notice? I can't see if you've put it in the I'm reading some of the chats I'm not going to read, but notice the conical shapes of the plants on either side are going to soften the outside edges of the house. And they also repeat the shape of the dormers in the roof, which is really nice repetition, adds unity. Okay, here we go. How about this? Yep, I agree. That fence is nice, but it needs something. Too straight, too narrow. That's right. Thanks, Beth. Awfully close. Needs curved lines. Bed could be deeper. Not enough evergreen. Think about, there you go. Think about what this bed is going to look like in the winter. And not going to look like much, right? I agree. Curving, adding some evergreens, making it much deeper, and covering up some of those, the railing there. I don't think we need to see that much of that. Okay. And for the sake of time, I'm going to ask you to quickly look at this. This is really interesting. Too crowded. Yes, thanks, Elaine. Thank you, Dawn. Yep, color's too heavy. Yep, it's way too busy. You know, this is an example of I love every plant I see, and I'm going to plant every plant. This is what a gorgeous home, and it's going to get lost behind all this landscape, right? It's beautiful, but it's eating the house alive. And so, yes, Janelle, I agree. Too much going on. Great textures, but it needs to be simplified. You know, I agree here. Okay. Now, here's what I want to do now. Just because we're running out of time. And that's so gorgeous, isn't it? I got to move on. And if you're called out to someone else's home, and I don't have time to read through the chat for this, but if you're called to someone's home, this is a very typical thing that we're going to get. This is a very traditional landscape. And if we say to these people, you know, you got nothing but boxwoods here, you need to rip them out and put in native plants, they're going to look at us like we have two heads and four eyes, and they're going to slam the door in our face, I think. And so try to find any area that is a problem area in this picture and make a suggestion to work natives into that area without having them rip out what they love. So leave what's working. Exactly, Jenny. Thank you. These windows are blocked over on the lower right and left. If they just leave everything else, and tear out these big clumps on the left and right that are blocking the windows, put a low flowering shrub in front of the window for some variety, and then put something looser, taller, airier, maybe a native tree at the corners. They're going to keep what they love, but we're going to work in some visual variety. Let's go back to this design. Thank you for your input, everybody. Oh my gosh, that was just absolutely wonderful. Okay, now I'm going to go back to that very old typical landscape that looks like most of the landscapes in my neighborhood. I don't know about where you live, but where I live, a lot of the landscapes, a lot of them look kind of like this. I'm going to pretend that these people came to me. Remember, this is all made up now. And they came to me and they said that they want to make their yard prettier. And I'm going to pretend that I talked with these clients and I found that these were their priorities. They want to add color. They want to provide paths around to the sides. They want to attract hummingbirds and pollinators and butterflies. They don't want to do too much watering, and they want to install it in phases if it's a lot of work that needs to be done to reduce the cost. And all of those are their goals that are legit, and I have to keep in mind if we're going to be successful and they're going to be happy. So I began, and I really did do this. I made a base plan of the front of their property. Now, I did not walk up to these people's house with a tape measure and a friend and measure. I just eyeballed it and just, made notes in my phone while I was out walking my dog back and forth for a couple of days. So these are estimates. I have no idea where the sewer line really is or the water line, but you can see what I did. And I'm gonna work on the front of their house for curb appeal. I don't even know what the back looks like. Never seen it, never been invited. I've never even seen these people. So, okay. So I did this base plan using 1 inch equals 4 feet. So each square is a foot. Then I did a site and a user analysis. And the reason I took the liberty of putting both of these together is because I've never seen anybody ever use the front, ever. So I thought, well, I don't need a whole drawing for that. So no existing shrubs are going to remain because they were all overgrown. And the tree was dead. It's even deader now. And so that's going to be removed. The stump behind the tree is not going to be removed because I believe I can design around it because we're going to save money. The family doesn't use the front yard except as access to the front door and around the sides when they take the trash out, I assume. And the color of the home is going to remain the same. But you notice that I paid attention on the lower right to the open view from the street. I found what might be, because of a downspout, a wet area on the middle right. On the left, it's really hot and sunny because I do know where the sun is going. So it's a high, hot, sunny area on the left-hand side of this lawn. And we want to keep the view open to the street. They have a lot of lawn. Okie dokie. So that's my site and user analysis. So I made some plant lists, and I made these plants lists because I couldn't get their opinion on plants that I found that I thought would work in my yard because I'm just about 5 or 6 houses down the street. So I made plant lists for the evergreen plants that I need for my 50%. I put in some flowering shrubs that I thought would work in my 25%. And I put in some tree choices, and I put in my forbs, my herbaceous plants, and I'm going to introduce some verticality and relieve the flat surface on the left-hand side of the sunny side of the house by putting a trellis there and planting some native vines. So that might work also. So these are the evergreens, and these are the flowers that I selected for the landscape design. Like I said, Salvia gregii we have a lot of deer. We have deer walking up and down the street all day, all hours. So Salvia gregii is a good one because it's not going to get eaten by the deer. And a low ground cover is a lyre leaf sage. I love that. And it's going to work as a ground cover, I hope. Yaupon holly, there's a dwarf Yaupon holly that we could use. And I'm introducing one little Camellia sasanqua for some flowering color in late fall, just to add flowers for some flowering beauty in the fall. So anyway, okie dokie. These are my shrubs. I'm going to move on because of time. These are my herbaceous perennials, golden alexanders and zizia. They wanted butterflies. And around the front door in the shade, underneath the cover of the porch, I designed to put some pots there and to have these beautiful Florida moonlight caladium that with the least bit of breeze move and add some visual interest and draw attention to the front door, because that should be the focal point of the landscape. Okay, now don't panic. Don't panic. Do you have to do a landscape design like this? You absolutely do not. But I just want you to notice how they indicated plants on this beautifully done professional landscape design. It's all circles, right? Well, we can do that. So that's what I'm using for my drawings. I'm not using a computer. I don't like to use computers. And so there you go. I'm a graph paper girl. So this is phase one. All the old plants have been removed, including the dead tree. The foundation evergreens are going in phase one, giving us the bones of the landscape. They're spread, as you can see here, they're spread all around the whole part of the facade, the front of the house, so that you're going to have visual interest all winter long. And I've also added some stepping stones to take them to the gate and access to the backyard, and to walk through what might be a wet area on the right-hand side at the corner of that downspout. This is phase one. Some dwarf yaupons on either side of the steps, the camellia that I chose for them that's a low grower for late fall color of white bloom. The Salvia gregii is S there, and J's are creeping junipers, which are going to fill in and cover a lot of area, eating up more and more grass. And then over there on the left, next to the chimney, near the gate, you're going to see I have a trellis with some coral honeysuckle. So there you go. I'm getting some vertical there, and I'm going to have a native plant. It's going to attract hummingbirds. Don't you love them in the spring? This is phase two. In phase two, I've got 3 flowering shrubs because my client loves knockout roses, and I knew that they did well there because that was the one plant that bloomed existing plants from what they already had. So I took out the old one and I put in an orange knockout rose to relate to the color of the brick. So it'll be beautiful. And if they deadhead, I think they might have to deadhead. I don't know. I don't grow knockout roses, but it'll be some long lasting color there. And I've also put in a hydrangea. I hope the native hydrangea will work there. There's a spigot. That's the one shady area right up against the porch. And so I'm hoping, and we've added Coosa dogwood. Now I made a deal with my imaginary client that we could put in the Coosa dogwoods, and you'll see the trade-off I made in phase 3. Okay. This is phase 3. There's a lot of small, low herbaceous plants coming in phase 3. The wildflower garden has been added around the fireplace and in front of the coral honeysuckle. We've put in creeping thyme to grow around the stepping stones. We've put in so many beautiful areas of herbaceous plants that are going to fill in and do beautifully here and give them wildlife support. We've got zizia, and we've got a lot of different, a lot of repetition here. The lyre leaf sage and things like that is all going to be repeated. This is phase 3. All right, let's review because we're at a little after 3. You're going to do your planning. You're going to make your mistakes on paper, create carefully curated plant lists so that you know what you're shopping for when you go shopping. You've given it thought, you know it's where it's going to go, and your chances of success are going to be so much greater. Going to use those planting guidelines to help design beds that are going to accent and enhance the beauty of your home, giving the plants enough space to have their beautiful natural shapes and to complement your landscape, the shape of your home with your landscape, rather than adding more of what you already have. And you're going to use the design principles to evaluate how you're doing. Beautiful landscape design has so much to do with connecting the home to the land. It provides visual interest, and it softens and it frames the home. Whether it's informal or formal like this, I hope that you have a better understanding of how to achieve success in your landscape designs, whether they're grand like this is, and it certainly is, or whether it's really simple. A good design is going to make you or your client so very happy. You've seen the resources. I included them on the handout. Are there any questions? I'm going to stop sharing. Are there any questions, anyone? Grace, this might be where you help me out if we have any time at all for.
There were a few in the chat, and maybe a little farther up. Somebody asked if they were going to do a computer because they were a computer person for this kind of design, if there was a good program for that. I don't use a formal program, but I didn't know if you had tried any, Janet. I have some graphic design ones that might be adequate, but honestly, I don't do this very
I
well.
used to work with one called Garden Planner. It's an old computer design program, and it only works from the plan perspective. It doesn't give you elevations. In the best world, if you know of this, you can send this information to me. I'd like a computer program for an idiot, and I'd like it to take a photo I take of a home. I'd like to put that into the program, and I'd like to play with landscapes all around it. You know what I mean? But I don't, because I can work so much more easily out in the field with a pencil on a piece of paper. And it's just, I wish I had something to recommend to you. If you folks know of a simple, easy landscape design program, please put it in the chat so that we can make note of it. That would be wonderful information to share.
Yeah.
Anyone?
We also got a lot of questions about where's the handout. It's on the webinar website, and the recording will also be posted there. So you guys can reference that afterwards if you want to rewatch and probably watch along as you plan. And we have a couple of questions about specific plants for specific locations. We have I like this one. When do you decide to rejuvenate a tree or just start over? She's got a beautiful dogwood that lost a big branch in a winter storm. It's still healthy, but it looks bad. So at what point do you take out the tree versus plant and plant a new one versus just, working that tree back into health?
My best recommendation to you, since I'm not there, my best recommendation to you is to take advantage of your tree stewards in your organization and have them come out and do a home visit or look at photos and make an educated suggestion, and then go with an arborist who's going to look at it and do work. And always make sure that you have an arborist touching your trees. Don't let anyone touch your trees, because they'll take out a tree in a minute. They don't get paid for not cutting trees. They get paid for cutting. So start with your tree stewards and go from there. That would be the best advice I could give you.
Yeah, I always recommend if, from a help desk perspective, I got a lot of like, should I take this tree out? Should I not take this tree out? And one of the questions that you have to have an answer to is like, what do you actually want? Um, want us to tell them, that they should or shouldn't take the tree out, and then ask us for our opinion and then argue with us about it. So you should just ask them what they want up front. If it's for a client, like, oh, I don't really like this tree. Should I take it out? Well, if you don't like it and it's not serving a function there, then, and you're willing to pay for it to be removed, that's what you want anyway, right? So, that's something to consider with your client interactions, is they do have an inkling of what they want ahead of time when they come to you. One of the other questions, was about I have a really hard time finding good low ground covers for shady
Yeah.
ideas,
Yeah.
shady areas.
No kidding. I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. It's challenging. It's very challenging. It's so funny. I have partridge berry. It grows about 1/4 of an inch tall and it's evergreen. That's about as low as you can get, but you have to lay on your belly to see it, right? So I don't think it's going to count. I think lyre leaf sage will work, but I'll tell you what, in shade and it it's very challenging to find a plant that's gonna be a ground cover in shade. I'm not really great at off the cuff plant suggestions, but and I don't want to say mondo grass because that's what I used to use all the time because it was a fabulous alternative but it's in that Liriope family, and I don't want to recommend that anymore. So let me think about it, and I can send you some alternatives if you like for that. Shade's a bear. It's really hard. It's very, very, plants want light, and it's really challenging. Use
If you can get it, my mother-in-law's in the Fairfax area, or the Falls Church area, and she's got a primarily shaded backyard. And she actually has a lot lot of the native ginger in her backyard.
Gotta be
She's been very
moist. Yeah.
successful there. She unfortunately also has a lot of things that have come in from the neighbor's yard, like vinca, and other things that are very competitive.
But Grace, that reminds me is one because I love native ginger and it works in the shaded areas in my yard if they're average to moist. But if they're under trees and they're dry, one ground cover that I have found that works pretty well in my landscape is heuchera, the native heuchera.
Yeah.
And so that's a good one for you to use. Foam flower will, wants light and wants a little average soil, so that's not going to work. But heuchera is a nice one. I didn't have much luck with native geranium, so I can't recommend that to you. But the heuchera is one of the plants and the ginger, if you've got average to moist, they're going to love that.
I've got a question for my own yard. And none of you have been there, and I'm embarrassed. We have the low spot for probably the surrounding 50 acres, and it is wet. My whole yard is wet. So we had a bunch of rain. We've had a summer, a very rainy week 2 weeks ago. There was standing water in like patches in my yard, like sometimes the geese visit that bad. And we have a ephemeral stream that runs through the back. We have had a hard time making that pretty, and competing with the things that were planted there that maybe should not have been planted there, like more resilient invasives. I would
I have
love
one.
I would love to do something with it. that, so it's not just that ugly patch in the back of the yard, but things will drown. I mean, it's wet.
Is it full sun or is it shaded?
It's shaded. There's a line
Ah,
of
yes.
silverleaf maples in
I
there.
have a
That
I
are
have a
really good.
favorite, and we use it underneath our bald cypress and underneath our river birch in our demonstration garden. It's called tussock sedge, and it grows in a swamp. And it is the softest, most beautiful grass, and it's only growing a little over a foot, maybe around a foot, foot and a half at the most. And it is beautiful, and the clumps are filling in. We're using it for soft landing places underneath our trees that will grow in really muck. Tussock sedge, it's a beautiful native plant.
I will check that
Yeah,
out.
it's a great one to discover.
I also have a question in the chat about small yards, like for condominiums or the townhouses or someplace where you have very little green space. And my brother is somebody that has a space like that, and he wants to fill it with things that are low maintenance because he doesn't want to mow. He doesn't want to own a lawnmower and have to mow a
Yeah.
12 by 20 patch in the front of his yard. So recommendations for that kind of environment.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you're allowed to and you don't have to fight with HOAs, I would, now listen carefully to the caveat I put on this. I would put in a butterfly garden in a very small townhome yard, and I would surround it with a border of something that looks tended and maintained. A strip of grass, he's going to have to take a lawnmower and mow it, but some low growing, if it's in the sun, you could use a lyre leaf sage as a border. You could use any kind of a sun loving, really low grower. But if you border those native wild plantings, it gives the cues of care that are needed to not upset people because it looks like it's gone to you know what, and we didn't care, and we're not tending it. So if you put a nice wide border around it, what a perfect place to grow a wildflower garden, and just let it be that. That's what I would do if you can get.
Be able to like really enjoy it too.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
on
why
your
not?
hands every day.
Why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah. Okay. I think we're gonna take one more
Yeah, pick one I can
question.
answer.
Graph paper. What size graph paper do you prefer? I would say I've got a variety for myself. Bigger is better for my eyes. But there's
Those
probably a standard
those
size.
drawings that I did of my neighbor's project, which I've never met those people, right? But anyway, I feel like I should roll them up and just put them in their front door and say, "Here, do this," right? I used a large sheet of graph paper for that because I don't like working small, and so I let 1 square be a foot and 1 inch be 1 inch be 4 feet. So just I bought, it's got to be a 18 by 24 inch pad of graph paper. But if you know how, what your scale is, you can go in and select the size of the graph paper based on the scale you want to work with. Okay.
Yes, I will add to that. I typically use, I'm not sure what size this is for like designing like ag experiments is my like experience with it. My brother is a computer engineer, and so he gave me this is probably hard to see. It's like a logic symbols. So there's a template, there's like a traceable stencil. And he goes, hey, there's some circles and shapes on here. You could use this if you're, he thinks I do a lot more landscape designing than I do, but he's like, if you're drawing stuff, these are, rectangular circles, little circles, wedges and stuff like that that are actually used in like electrical engineering that have specific meanings. But if you can get like a stencil, that might make it really easy to get, all your circles the same size if you're a person that cares about uniformity like that in your drawings. Instead, so you can get maybe a little bit more professional look in your drawings and not have to manage with a computer. But I think the hand drawings that Janet does are significantly more accurate to how plants are actually growing. So, but that was an interesting suggestion from a family member who has no gardening background.
You know,
Was
another,
uses those.
I was just quickly reading some of your comments, and let me say thank you so much for your kind comments. I really, really appreciate your positive feedback. Thank you so much. My goal was that I could give you something that actually you could use and work, some new guidelines. I love potted plants because then it doesn't matter what your soil is. You can just go out each day, take your cup of coffee. Your brother can go out there with his coffee and the hose and water plants in pots, and he can grow any darn thing he wants because he's got perfect soil, and you can spend all kinds of wonderful money on gorgeous pots, right? So
Yes.
be careful that they're winter proof because you'll have to schlep them in somewhere during the winter, which is but in a small area, pots add a lot, so that would be kind of neat. Thank you all so much for attending. It was really great having you, and thanks for your wonderful participation. It was appreciated.
Thank you so much, Janet. I will let you know when the recording is up. And as many of the links as I can pull from this to include in the show notes, I will. Thank you so much, guys. Phenomenal webinar. I learned so much. Thank you, Janet. Everybody give her a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.